So in my dream, I was at my mom's old house where I lived all my childhood. And I was with a bunch of people, with my mom and a bunch of kind of adults. And then there's this dude outside the door, and he's very threatening and loud. And basically he was saying he's going to shoot us through this door, like through the windows. So we all kind of back up. And then we have a gun as well. Like, somebody here has a gun. And they like try to fire back at him, and then they like run back, they don't hit him. And then he's like, the next time you pop your head out, you're gonna die. And they do it, and then they die. He shoots them. And then there's this moment of confusion where we're looking around, we're like, who's gonna take the gun? And this is the first part of the dream that really, really stands out to me symbolically, because it reflects this experience of who is going to take responsibility, and the experience of trying to avoid responsibility in both minor situations and very serious situations. And so I don't go for it. My aunt takes it. Aunt Laura, shout out to you for taking care of that, dude. That was lit. And so she takes the gun, and then she fires back, but she misses again and doesn't hit him. And then he makes it inside the door, and then we're all kind of looking at him, and he's like kind of pointing his gun around trying to figure out who to shoot, because he's kind of scared, because we're all kind of like surrounding him. And I wait for the appropriate moment, and then I go and I like take this chair basically and like run at him and pin him down, or like I think knock the gun out of his hand, and I take the gun and I shoot him, and right before I shoot him I say something like, go to hell, or it was like a rhyme though, it was like a rhyming damnation of this man. But it's something like, be damned, go to hell, and I kill him. And then right after this happens, someone texts me, and in real life this person is somebody who's very, very chaotic and has been in a lot of trouble. And they text me something like, that which is real cannot die, or that which is eternal cannot die. You know, something which is, we hear a lot in like spiritual circles, you know, the real self cannot die. The absolute reality is eternal. And I text him like, oh, that's funny, you know, what just happened to me? Yeah, so I think a huge symbolism of this dream is definitely responsibility. And responsibility in the face of very, very serious things, which really almost everybody in the world has this responsibility, because there's a very serious things that are happening, I think, in everybody's life. There are serious either life or death scenarios, or very serious things dealing with emotions, and our experiences, and I've been going through both to some extent, in some way. And so yeah, I think the first key moment that stands out is that moment of choice of who is going to take up the responsibility to protect everybody and also to kill this person. And then the other part of this dream is kind of this thing of coming to grips with the very, very violent aspects of reality. I talk about this a lot, and I think about this a lot, but there is very intense violence in this world. And, you know, I say essentially, to live is to kill and to die. Simply true. To live, you have to take from what's outside of yourself. You have to kill either plants or animals simply in order to exist. And also, the fundamental condition of living is also that you have to die. So to live is to kill and to die. And so it's, what do we do in the face of that existential sort of matter of killing and dying, as well as responsibility for these things? And there's this response from my friend who says that you really shouldn't be worried about it because what is real cannot die. Which I think, in one way, is actually absolutely true. But in another way, is kind of a shirking of the real facts. It can be. One can go to this nihilistic place. And they look around and say, well, clearly I am not responsible for everything that is happening. Clearly things have been set up in a way which entails violence, entails pain, entails a responsibility, sometimes the necessity to harm others. And so there can be this feeling of, well, I was just put into this world, you know. I'm not responsible for it. Which I think in one way is fair and valid. These are the conditions of life, so let's get used to it. But at the same time, that kind of denies the aspect of responsibility and it really denies the very real suffering that exists. In a way of kind of letting us off the hook. And this person who texts me, in real life, they remind me of this. Because it feels like they might justify doing bad things with this sort of nihilistic thing. So yeah, I think it's essentially a dream about coming to terms with our responsibility or our lack of responsibility over death and life. And in a lesser way, and as a reflection of this, because death and life is the ultimate thing, it's also a reflection of all the responsibility that we hold of harming or helping others as well as ourselves. And also, this perspective, this one way of looking at things, which says that, in truth, nothing really matters, it's just a passing show. And that, really, the absolute reality can never be harmed. We are such small specks within that, constantly being recycled. And that the real reality cannot be harmed. It's a very cosmic perspective, zooming way, 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 way out from our incarnation or our perspective of this individual human identity. And so I think it is also very much about how do we balance the cosmic perspective and the human perspective. So I think that the people who are spiritual who go way too far out and lose touch with the human perspective. They say, it's all a game and nothing really matters, which I legitimately believe is true. But at the same time, I feel very balanced within myself with this human perspective if I look at how serious this suffering is, how serious these things are, my responsibility in the middle of it. So yeah, I think it's about, you come face to face with reality, which entails murder and death. And then What is our response to that? Is it this cosmic perspective? And if we take this cosmic perspective, is it an evasion of the very, very real responsibility and suffering which exists? Or is it in touch with reality? Yeah, and that's something I feel within myself very much, is this blending together of these two perspectives, which are very much both present within me. On one level, looking around at what's around me, it seems very, very apparent to me that everything is a game created by infinite intelligence for us to enjoy. And that we are tiny, 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 tiny specks with very little consequence or importance. But I also feel that very blended very deeply with my experience of humanness. Indeed, very intense experience of being human, in which even the smallest things can create intense pain or intense joy. Something like somebody having a crush on me, which is so small in this gigantic cosmic scape of terror and death. And yet, in that human aspect, which I feel very strongly, there can also be a very intense experience, even with the tiny little things of my little human life, and socializing with other beings, and how they see me, and so I think it kind of just, that whole dream really just kind of expresses my experience of life. Of that there's very intense pain and fear, very intense matters of life and death, of killing and dying. There's also tiny little trivial human personality matters which are also valid. And how do we exist with both of these? And that is something, I think that's really the core of it for this dream and for my life experience right now. Because I've been exposed to other people which have such deep suffering, and involving potentially the realms of death and murder, or at least harming other people. And at the same time, I'm living this very, very joyful, but also kind of small, or in my estimation, small, petty life. I'm very, very preoccupied with romantic relationships and my friendships, and like playing games with people, like playing poker, or making YouTube videos, making art, playing video games. And I'm preoccupied with these things in a way which is both intense good and intense bad. And then it's, how does that relate with this other thing of such tremendous seriousness? There's such tremendous seriousness of the world. This sort of cognitive dissonance, or just like misalignment, or just like seeming bizarre fragmentation of like people starving, people dying in war, people in deep psychological torture, as well as the people who are involved in this, the president, the high people of government. And then me and my friends who are floating around this little fun bubble where we play poker every week and hang out and play games. And then, even within that little bubble of my kind of world, which I'm kind of describing right now as being kind of petty or small, just very preoccupied, there is also still so much suffering. Such intense emotional dramas between people, which feel so intense, so charged with emotion, so complex. And that very much sums up my life experience. This confusing disjointedness between what I'm kind of viewing as petty or small, which takes up a lot of my life. Playing games with friends, worrying about relationships, making art, playing games, worrying about friendships and how people see me in little slights and annoyances. And then the vast seriousness of what exists in this world, and my place within that, my responsibility, the lack of responsibility within that. Yep.